Hi, so welcome back again to the Confident Birth Preparation series. Today I am welcoming Kemi Johnson, who's an absolutely wonderful birthkeeper on a mission to support women right around the world now, an international birthkeeper. So I'm really pleased to welcome you back again, Kemi.
Thank you for having me. I love our conversations and
Mm.
I really do. And I always learn a lot and I love to share as well. So thank
Yeah, and I'd love to talk to you about physiological birth today because it's one of the things you've really been passionate about recently in particular. So I'd love to just to explain what it is first and why it's so important.
So, physiological birth is a way to describe what we used to be able to call normal birth. Natural birth now has connotations too. People get affronted by that, and I completely understand why. I remember after I'd had my cesarean, I'm not saying that's everyone's reasoning, but I remember after I had my cesarean, I couldn't listen to people's birth stories or watch videos or anything because I hadn't had what I'd prepared for and what I wanted. So I know that accounts for some people getting offended if we call it normal or natural because they're saying, well, does that mean that my birth was abnormal or unnatural? And that's not what is meant at all. I just wish we could see it as in normal breathing or normal blinking or normal pooing or anything that we do that we are built for. And we are built for the, by and large, we are built to make babies, carry them, and give birth to them. It's not a put down on anyone who needs assistance to help to make the baby, carry them, or give birth to them. It's not a put down. I'm just saying that the default for humanity is carrying a baby to term and then the baby being expelled from the hole at the bottom of our torsos called the vagina. I'm well aware that not everyone that gives birth calls himself a woman, and I would never want to exclude them. So I get into hot water from time to time because I say birthing women and people, or I say parents, and people get quite upset with me about that. But I just don't think anyone should be excluded, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just trying to find the best way to express myself without excluding anyone. So,
Yeah.
but I'm a woman. Most of the people that give birth are women or consider themselves to be women. And I just love what I do. I love my curves. I love the hole at the bottom of my torso. I love my ability to expel the next generation from them. I just think it's just such an amazing skill. So when I'm talking about physiological birth, I'm literally talking about that ability to expel the baby from the hole at the bottom of our torsos. So and it's not just what happens at the time. It's what, as I know, and as I'm sure you know, I know, we are not just our bodies. I'm not saying that physiological birth knowledge is the be all and end all, but just as birth has been sabotaged by the attack on our mindset from before we were born, we just enter the world where, we don't know our bodies, we don't value them, we don't like them, we don't really have an understanding of how they work. I mean, that's not essential, really, because I don't quite understand how blinking works or how breathing works. But I do things to facilitate it, and that's what childbirth is about. I'm not saying everyone needs to know exactly how it works, the minutiae of it all, but at the moment, we're sabotaging it a lot. So I think we need to recover our steps so that we can understand how it works, so that we can stop sabotaging it. And then it will be an innate knowledge again, and we won't be having all the hypnobirthing classes and the antenatal classes and everything else because it will be knowledge that we all have that we're born with. So my obsession isn't to the exclusion of mindset. In actual fact, I'm starting to do work with another birthkeeper about mindset. So we're hoping to have something to offer to parents for that because I actually realise that mindset can affect how our bodies work. Mindset affects our physiology, as we know. So, if you think you're going to be rubbish at a job interview, guess what? Your hands will be shaking, you'll be sweating, you'll be the wrong colour, be stammering and probably won't get the role. because our mindset has affected our physiology. So I know mind comes first, but I just am, I can bang on a lot about physiological birth, so I may as well do that. That's my expertise. I'm learning a bit more about mindset and the effect of the brain during pregnancy, etc. So that's all going to be very interesting. But at the moment, my expertise definitely is how to facilitate the physiology of birth for
Mhm.
good outcomes for the parent and the baby.
Yeah, I think it's really important because we're going on with our life and we're absorbing what's around us without really questioning. We're just going on with our life, we're having fun, we're doing all these things, and then we come to have a baby, and the things we've absorbed that we haven't questioned till now, and then we put our trust into the caregivers without knowing about the full history.
Mm-hmm.
And about,
Yeah.
we assume that they're there to care for us, and individual people usually are, but they may be compromised by the system, or they may be compromised by their own perspectives, what they've witnessed, what they've seen, and so they've lost
Right.
connection with that. But originally, most of the individual
Right.
people are amazingly doing want the same thing, but the system itself doesn't. So it wasn't set up for that originally.
It's
So here
not
we
set
are,
up for that.
where we
Woo!
actually need to talk about physiological birth. Imagine we having a conversation about how to blink and how to make sure you stay to breathing. That would
Yeah,
seem a bit bizarre,
it would.
but it's necessary. And one of the things that really touched me and inspired me was one of your posts you put up with the magic that happens when women and birthing people get that distinction of of turning it on its head to physiological birth is an ordinary physiological function. So what can we do to support, something that's quite ordinary, like there's some mindset. I'd love you to talk a little bit about what you mean about that magic that happens.
It it's hard to describe, and I think that is part of the magic too. It's
Hmm.
something that's felt.
Hmm.
So when we have to go back, we have to reclaim our trust somehow. And I think when people view childbirth as a medical event, there's no way you can build trust in that. You immediately compartmentalize childbirth to something that somebody else has to do for you.
Mm.
We enshrine it in our language, like delivered of, delivered. Even people that love me, who have attended their birth, they say, yes, she delivered my baby. And I pull them up short. I said, I did not. Your baby is not post or a pizza. You gave birth to your child. I happened to be in the house at the time or in the room at the time. And I think that when we who are charged to keep safe the whole process of birth and the people that are doing it, I think we have to humble ourselves. We have to acknowledge how little a role we play in the actual birth itself. We may be great at holding the space. We may have been great at allowing that person to retain their power and confidence. But the magic of it is literally, wow, you give birth. The majority of people that give birth give birth. I am here literally just to be a spare pair of hands just in case they're needed. The chances of them being needed are very small. However, they're not zero. So me being nearby is nice. But if I could master being nearby without sabotaging the birth, which I've almost got it. But if all of us could just really do that, the trust will be rebuilt and we'll be there when we're needed, rather than, at the moment, the magic is kind of being destroyed by the broken trust. We need to restore that magic. We're able to do it. It's a miraculous thing. We're already winners. You're there because, that one out of several million sperm, joined with the eggs inside of your mother, and you came. It's such a unique experience. You're already a winner. So
Hmm.
when you're here and then you're repeating that process to bring forward more citizens for the next generation, we need to honour you. There's a magic about it. There is. It's hard to describe it. There's a magic about it. It is, you could break it down, but there's still aspects of childbirth that even those of us that study it 24/7 really don't understand fully how it
Hmm.
works. And we need to honour that, really respect it, I think.
Yeah, I can feel that. And it feels like um it might be quite a radical, feel like a big step at first for someone to even begin to believe and trust that they can have this physiological birth if they've been, even when they've been planning. I know, I think there's some stats somewhere, 85% of people go in wanting this physiological birth and then they're not certainly not that many getting it. And and that's like the mindset shift before you even start preparing for birth. So it's conscious about what it is you're a physiological really is and how actually easier it can be when the conditions are right. And
Yeah,
that's the thing, what you provide when you're with people, you're supporting them getting the conditions right, the environment before you, so that when she's birthing, you're present, but it's all those conditions that she can
yeah,
then just get on and do her thing.
yeah, exactly. In fact, Michelle O'Don, thankfully, a lot of people are quoting him right now when he says you can't really facilitate birth. What you're really doing is not disturbing it.
Mm,
And I really do appreciate his thoughts on that because um, I don't think there's many of us that are even beginning to think about ways that we could not disturb birth.
yeah.
I think it's a minority sport. I think once we, I mean, it's a lovely thing to be honoured as a midwife, and that's kind of being turned on its head at the moment because of all the poor outcomes. But the midwife used to be really honoured by her local community, and I think it may have gone to our heads a bit, like the God complex, savior, hero mentality kind of thing. Um, and I think we need to. I think we need to humble ourselves again and remember that we're called to it. It's a calling, and we've got a special skill, but it doesn't mean that we're more special than anyone else. Everyone's come with their remit, and this is ours. And I just think we need to really humble ourselves and be as quiet and unobtrusive as possible, because actually the real stars are the parent and the baby. The real star is that mother.
What are the things that you feel would be most supportive to someone planning a physiological birth that would help them achieve that so they don't become one of the, I don't know what the percentage is out of the 85 that don't achieve it?
A lot of units are waving around almost 50% vaginal births as being their physiological birth, right? But that's not. The vaginal birth, you know, the, what's happened is the instrumental births have really reduced now because they just would prefer they prefer to go for a cesarean right now, even though they don't want to go for cesarean because they're being asked not to because they're expensive. A lot of the obstetricians now seem to be quite wary of instrumental births because using instruments on a baby is risky. So they're going for the cesarean, which is their comfort zone. So when they do say this about the vaginal birth, I really want them to. I really want to find out where they're getting these figures from, and sometimes the figures don't add up. And anyway, there was a unit that was very honest about. Well, they weren't. They were waving around. I think like a 47% vaginal birth rate. And then when they actually, the consultant midwife, which I really honour her for that, took it upon herself to go and really break down the stats. So she started to eliminate certain things from it, just to find out what the physiological birth rate was, where a
Mm,
person goes into spontaneous labour, has a baby without an epidural, um, and without instruments, etc. She broke it down and found that only 2% of the people giving birth in that unit had a physiological birth.
yeah.
You know, with intact, with the third stage completing without
Mm,
someone early clamping and things like that. So when we consider that, I know that 85% of parents or women that wanted to give birth, I know for a fact that they were dreaming of the birth where they went to spontaneous labour, picked the baby up themselves, brought them to their chest, fed them, waited for the cord to go white. That's what a lot of people are wanting. Even the cord to go white bit is new, but now that they know, oh, what? There's optimal cord care. They want that. They want the dream, and they're not getting it. That's a huge percentage of people not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
I went off on one, but it's just it breaks you when you're thinking, but this is physiological. Like around the world, people are doing this who may not have the means that we have in our society here in the UK. They're not getting what they want, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, how well resourced they are. It doesn't matter how many classes they went to. It doesn't matter how knowledgeable their partner was. It doesn't matter how prepared they were. They still didn't get what they want, which is a physiological birth. So the way I encourage facilitation of physiological birth is primarily mindset. So looking at videos of physiological birth, joining social media accounts that show physiological birth. I also encourage reading other people's birth stories who've had physiological births. I encourage them to follow practitioners or facilitators of physiological birth, join forums where people who've had physiological births are talking. It's really going for the mindset. Yes, and move. Yes, and make sure you eat clean. Yes, and hydrate well. But first thing I think to do is to start to shift your mindset, and even that's from preconception, and also to check that your partner's on board with that, the person that you're making children with, because if that partner, I hate to go on the negative, but just to say that if that partner doesn't understand how important physiological birth is, doesn't know what it is, doesn't understand the health-giving properties of it, because people that have physiological births that complete the cycle uninterrupted with their children gently born don't have the health challenges that people that don't do that have. So just recognising why you might be choosing that, and honouring it and respecting it, and just checking that the trust bond is good between you both as you're going to start raising children together. So I'm talking, more and more I realise it's about that. Yes, be moving. Yes, rest well. Yes, dance. Yes, get stressors out of your life. Look at who's around you. What are they saying? What are they believing about you? Being away from people that are toxic to your pregnancy and your birth choices. You can start talking to them afterwards, but I'm just saying, during a pregnancy, you really have to be very fastidious so you don't, just as Michelle O'Donnell said, that you don't sabotage it, that it's not sabotaged, or it's not disturbed. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I see as well, that how you're feeling and believing, how your own birth was, how your imprinting is influencing how you approach and how the birth providers approach. And what I'm seeing is what you're talking about is how it gets hijacked. So essentially women and birthing people, often now what I'm seeing is people have got that dream that you spoke of, they've done some hypnobirthing classes, they've cleared some of their fears from the press, or they've read some stories, and they're going in with that trust, and then they're slightly off the pathway in some way, maybe they're taking a bit longer, or maybe they haven't truly understood what a physiological birth is and accepted sweeps for no real reason other than they're a bit fed up at the end of pregnancy, which is quite a normal common part of feeling pregnant at the end, particularly in our society where we're not supported and working as late as you can, so you get more maternity leave, as opposed to finishing earlier, being supported, and nourishing meals made for you, resting, and all of these things that we often can't do practically, or maybe we could, but we haven't got that mindset to do so, because the rest of the world's saying keep going. And again, that you're just having a baby, it's a normal physiological thing. We're not understanding that the normal physiological thing of having a baby is such hard work physically, and you need support. So you're carrying on with this life, and then you're getting to the end and people are saying, well, let's hurry it up a bit. Like you say, like the trust, and they hurry it up. Unfortunately, even if it did, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but it isn't actually hurrying it up. And if it does, it might be more painfully hurried up, or it's like you've immediately broke. So it's then getting hijacked. And what I'm seeing is that the women and people going along with this dialogue haven't noticed it's being hijacked until it's too late. Because they just think we're going to do this benign stretch and sweep as they see it, because it's been presented as just something we can do to help you get the baby in your arms. So they have the image of baby in arms and not the reality.
Yes, very true.
I think you've spoken a lot about this.
Very true.
You see this happening as like the first stage of it being derailed. So the woman is got her dream and her thing, and she's actually doing really well if she was just left to do all this hypnobirthing and so on, and instead it's little by little eroded and hijacked.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, what this means when it's like this, it means that we lose sight of what physiological birth looks like. And so, for instance, if you're working in a unit where people are coming in various states of labour, you could be forgiven for thinking, gosh, this childbirth thing really doesn't work, because it's been sabotaged by the community midwife doing a membrane sweep, or the antenatal midwife saying, I'll just pop up on the bed for your sweep. So the people that are working around birth now, some of them maybe have hardly ever seen a physiological birth. So they think birth is really complicated and dangerous, but all they're seeing is sabotage birth.
Yeah, because it points to those statistics you shared of only 2% in a unit that thinks they have 47% physiological birth, because they're not counting the membrane sweeps. They're not even necessarily, it's almost like they're mixing up vaginal birth at any cost with physiological birth. And not including the placenta in that.
It's really, really not the same.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really, really not the same. It's like there's a wonderful birth worker, doula, and I think she's got a podcast as well, Katie Hickey. She had her video shared. She permitted her video to be shared. But what I love about that video, it was the whole video. It was the whole birth. It was, clips of the whole birth. I must share it actually again. And it was physiological, and it wasn't I had some tightenings, I coughed and I got a baby out. She worked really hard to give birth to her baby. And this is what we need to share also. I'm guilty of it. We share the end, the magical end, emergence of the baby. But I also try to show whole films. So one time I showed, must have been about 2 months ago. No, it was before I got here, so it was 3 months ago. Midwife Angelina, she's a midwife in the US, and she just did an IG. I mean, I wouldn't do that because they were quite loud and giggling and things like that, but I'm a bit quieter than that. But it was so lovely. She clearly had a really great relationship with the mother and the family, actually. So we had mother-in-law there, we had partner there, we had birthing mum, we had midwife Angelina and her midwife's assistant. So there was a lot of people around, but it was lovely because it was literally an IG live. She just started recording and recorded all the way till the baby was born. It was a fast birth. It was about 90 minutes. But again, I just think that we need to see more the whole birth. We need to see the gaps in between. We need to see the mum do a little wiggle, a little cry, pop to the loo, stagger from her mum to her partner to her mum. We just need to see more real birth. In fact, I was going to start collecting some births on YouTube anyway, so I better just do that now. People just need to get more familiar with physiological birth. Then they'll understand why it is that they innately want it. Then they'll understand what it is that's being sabotaged.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And when someone's really got an understanding of the physiological birth and how amazing that can be, because I have to say, I know a disproportionate number, given the stats you've just shared, of people who've experienced physiological birth, even if it was sometimes that happens
Yeah,
after a difficult
yeah,
one, and they all
exactly.
say the
There's
same
God.
thing. Every single person I've ever spoken to says the same thing. I could do that again tomorrow. Maybe not literally when they're like, I'm tired now.
Yeah,
But they literally, energy
yeah,
wise, it's like, I could do that again
yeah,
tomorrow, like in the lit up from the
always.
inside
Yeah,
thing. And it can be quite triggering
yeah.
for so many
Lit
people.
up
There's
from
so
the
many traumatized
inside.
mothers walking around, essentially. So many traumatized mothers and children walking around.
Yeah,
That can be quite triggering. But I wonder what you'd
yeah,
recommend for women that have got the vision on a physiological birth, which is most women and birthing people, that they've
yeah,
understood what it's about, and then they come up against an obstacle. For example, they've had a growth scan or a scan, just an ordinary scan, and it says the baby's big, or
yeah,
these are common things that start the
yeah,
derailment process because they're fiddling with the mindset. Suddenly the baby's big, or the baby's small, or the
yeah,
baby's in a funny position, as if that carved in stone,
yeah.
never mind the inaccuracies, but as if the position's carved in stone. And again, like you said about the skills, what would you recommend someone do to keep focus and sight of their physiological birth?
It's such a difficult one. For a start, um, we originally had babies, we offered scans for babies at 12 weeks and 20 weeks. Now, the jury's out about scans, to be honest, for those of us that do read research. So, you know, that's for another interview. But if you choose to have the 12-week and the 20-week scan, that used to be enough. If somebody were to say to me, oh my goodness, like we've eradicated um, poorly babies, or mortality, perinatal mortality, because we've got a third trimester scan, if someone is able to say that, but it's not eradicated at all. There's a debate about whether there's been any impact at all. And to be honest, if with us now having so many units with a minimum 40% cesarean rate, and we know that having cesareans has an effect on the maternal and baby health. I think we all need to. I think we could all safely say that scanning in the third trimester has not been beneficial for for the UK or anywhere. I think we can say that within 18 months of all the units rolling it out, we've got now 45% cesarean rate. So something's wrong.
It
So
sounds like they're diagnosing big
so I think
babies that they wouldn't have known were big if they didn't have the scan, that may not actually be big because they're ignoring the fact that it's
exactly.
inaccurate.
That's the point, because you've made it routine. Because, oh, that's a big baby. Oh, that's another big baby. Oh, look, that's another big baby. Hasn't anyone figured out that maybe that's not a big baby? That is just the size that babies are in the third bloody trimester. Isn't
Mm-hmm.
anyone going to figure it out? Isn't anyone going to see that that curve might be wrong? It might need adjusting
Mm-hmm.
on the chart, because we never used to routinely measure babies in the third trimester. They can't all be bloody big.
Yeah,
They
and
can't all
sometimes the
be,
two
and
things.
they're not,
Sometimes they're
because
not
they're
big.
born their average weight.
Yeah. Sometimes they're coming out and they're not as big as they were
Yeah, but
said,
that's
and other
exactly
times
my
they're coming out
point.
as big as they said easily. And I had, my third was bigger. He was £9, £9.6, £9.7, I remember.
Okay,
And
so that's a
my
nice
mid,
juicy baby. But
yeah, my others were 7.10,
but I just want to
7.14.
ask you, Charlotte, if you did something, if you were, if I'm not going to talk about obstetricians or midwives now. If you if you were making estimates of something or doing something, say if you were trying to bake cakes without using measurements, you say, no, I can estimate it. Say you're trying to make a sponge, and you make 10 sponges, and 8 of them are not all that. No one wants to eat it. Some of them are rock hard. Some of them fall apart. When you say, do you know what? I don't think this strategy of estimating ingredients is working, would you? You'd change your strategy.
Yeah.
Most clinicians who are recommending induction or cesarean for big baby, all they'd need to do is go back to the notes, the birth notes, and compare what they estimated with the baby's actual weight.
Yeah.
And if they were to honestly, authentically do that, they would stop making this recommendation today,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time the estimate is wrong.
Yeah.
But someone's had an induction that's cascaded to cesarean where the baby's having respiratory distress and has to spend time in NICU. So many people are having an induction that cascades to cesarean, so they've got a cut across the middle, so they're not too comfortable with breastfeeding, so breastfeeding doesn't go as well as was planned, or they need to supplement with some kind of formula. You know, there's so many cascades that are happening because someone had the temerity to recommend an intervention, despite the fact that we already had the evidence that in interventions for a big baby would benefit for the parent or the baby. We already know that. We already know that. So I just had to go in there because I just had to really break it down, Charlotte, and interrupt you because it's not working. It's not working. Yeah, you need to stop. Like
Yeah, I want people
today,
to hear it
no
because
one's
when you
listening
share
because
the
they think it's
statistic,
okay that half of the women that come through their unit leave with a scar across their abdomen. They think it's okay. I'm very
yeah,
passionate about this.
I agree because I think people are going into their birth with their own individual experience. They want their experience. They're not thinking about the statistics of the unit. Even if they look at them, they're assuming that they're unique and it's their own unique experience. So if they're recommended an induction or they're recommended big baby, they think they're the only one that's happening to. That these people in this situation think they're a rarity. They're not realizing it's happening to everyone across the board, and these statistics are through the roof. Because you're in your own experience. You're not expecting to have to go and look at the stats and question. And we're now having to say to people, this is what you need to do, unfortunately, or choose a home birth and choose practitioners and doulas and someone to be your advocate. And it's unfortunately so necessary, particularly if you want to say no to a lot of the things that are suggested as routine. And some of these routine things are sold because everybody loves to see the picture of the baby. And so they think, oh, there's no harm. But they're not seeing, because the scan itself isn't a life-threatening thing. It's what the results of that mean when they're interpreted in a certain way that changes behavior and mindset and is shaken because the trust has been put where it shouldn't be.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and the contrast with my births, where I didn't know how much my baby weighed, guesstimate or otherwise. I knew he was bigger. We both agreed, me and my midwife, that he was bigger. And originally she was thinking 8 pounds something. And so I was just had that 8 pounds something is going to be bigger. I kind of knew. I didn't expect 9 pounds 6 because mine was 7 pound 10. But my midwife did.
Yeah.
She palpated the traditional skills. She just didn't tell me because she didn't want me to be worried about his size because of what other people were telling me, because I looked enormous. And we just agreed very honestly, he's going to be bigger, you're going to be fine. And it was genuine from her. But the last couple of days, she palpated and she was within 1 pound, is it? Get the right 1 pound, 1 ounce, sorry, 1 ounce, for what she guessed he was going to be, because she told me later from her palpitations, because she's got that skill. So this is where you can, as a midwife, palpate. You basically checking, is the baby okay and everything, but you can think, oh, he feels like this way. You can then check that when they're weighed afterwards, and with skill over time, you're going to hone that, and you're going to know what feels abnormal. Like she just guessed.
Charlotte,
it's amazing.
I can't guess within an ounce. I can definitely say, oh, that's
well, it was a guess. She was right.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a very special skill. Even if I hold a baby, it's very rare that I hold a newborn, but if I do, I still can't guess the weight.
You all have individual skills, right? Because it's not the most essential skill to have. The skill is this baby okay? Is that, you're tuning into their energy, you're tuning into that skill. So that's just something that maybe she can do that and you can't, but it doesn't matter. It's
very good.
We
need a Janie in our pocket.
Everyone has these different skills, and it was great. And another thing about the physiological birth was, it was hard work. I spent it on the toilet shouting a lot, but the end bit was, it was great for, because she was witnessing, she could see, and she'd, like you said, with partners, she knew, because whether it's a doula or a midwife or someone, she knew when my husband wanted to touch me and I didn't want to be touched, she knew. So she just, in the most beautiful way, said, Oma, would you like to come and sit next to me? And she was like, come and sit next to me. And it was, so he was like, oh, it's all okay. And he did what she said because he trusted her, because he was a man in the room. And he wasn't worried. He just wanted to help me in a way that I didn't want at that moment. So it was exciting. And then at the very end, I felt like I was like this. I don't know, because you can't really see your own bottom. It wasn't my priority. And it was, and I literally felt myself go like, so all my babies have come out in one go without the head first. They just have done that. And it was like that. And it literally, there was a contraction coming, and I said, I want the baby to come out now. So he did. And it literally went, ooh. But like that, woo. And I literally felt it. And Janie commented, because you can ask her one day, I literally, it went like, obviously to get round his head and his body, it just went woo, and then back again, like just like flowing around him. And he just, all in one go, and it was just like woo. And there he was. And I was picking him up, and it was quite, quite some force he came out, because that's what he's like. And he was great. And it was just, wow, that I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know my body could do that so fast.
Wow.
I felt it, and Janie commented about how I opened him, in that way to round him. And so we don't realize what we can do because we're not always seeing it. People like you see it, so you're aware of it, and you're promoting it.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, the confidence in your ability to birth is strong, and it's just like even you describing that moment triggered a memory for me for my second birth, but also it's all of the people out there that have given birth and they felt that, I don't know, you probably wouldn't describe it as that, like they were vomiting their child out from down below. That's how some people describe it. It's like
it's a physiological function, right? Your body's doing it.
Woo!
Your body's doing
but
it.
can you imagine if I hadn't given birth and I heard you say that and I was pregnant or trying for a baby, I'd be so encouraged to hear how your body just literally opened and released your child to the world. That would really encourage me, and they're not getting to hear that. They're watching the media, and every single soap of a birth has got someone screaming and fighting and being rushed down a corridor on a trolley, and that's all they've seen. So I just love more people. It's a little soundbite that I think you need to release.
Yeah, it's amazing the things that we're not aware of. I had another moment in my first where he moved down without a contraction at one point. Well, my body opened without me even feeling any contraction. I just felt it move a bit wider and him move a bit further down. I could feel it. And I could feel the different types of muscle movement when I was tuning in, like how it moves up and out first and then you bear down later. I felt that shift. I mean, it's really fascinating. So amazing. So
that's brilliant. You can see so you totally know why it's an obsession. I'll never get over it. I will never get over birth. I won't. And I understand now why some people that don't see it, being a midwife can make them quite weary. And there are a lot of midwives that don't really stay the course. They might qualify but leave soon afterwards. And I think it's because they don't see the magical birth. They don't see the birth in the woman's own power and the person's own power. They just see hanging of drips, having their hands inside of vaginas. I probably do like 1 VE a year, 2 VEs. It's that's business as usual, routine. Not even remembering women's faces.
Mm.
It's horrible way to work. It's no wonder so many
Yeah.
midwives get burnt out and not
But the
enjoying it,
magic,
because a lot of us go in. Sorry,
no, I
I
mean,
was just going to say a lot of us go. I was
you
going to say
go.
a lot of us go into midwifery. A lot of us go into midwifery with very high hopes, and it gradually gets stripped from
Mhm.
us, and then we're bullied, and then we're punished if we do anything that is supporting physiology or
Yeah.
keeping the woman first. So, yeah,
That's what I'd
it's
like to see change. And it's like the women and birthing people and the birth keepers together, like for this shared magic of birth and for the shared future, because we're not as separate as we've been led to believe. It would have been community
yes,
in the
that's
beginning, like, so the magic that you're describing, I would say, and see if you agree, that we have a knowledge of it somewhere way back from our ancestors, from our souls, of that possibility, and that's what's pulling people into the midwifery profession, or to desire a physiological birth. That is pulling us, and at the moment we're still in the place where it's being slapped down. And
right.
what part of my hope for this series is, and for bringing you on here, is that we can, all of us together, are relighting that magic and finding solutions that we can make the magic prevail.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why those of you that are activists and educators and bringing us together, you share your lived experience as well, which is priceless. There's not going to be so many of you around the rate we're going. So, you're a precious commodity too. And especially the attack that there's been on us in the last year or so. So many have had to go and find different roles, different ways to sustain themselves and their families.
Mhm.
And when you're doing that, you don't have so much time to read, to talk, to look at people's birth experiences, to look at images, to learn new skills. You're just in survival mode. So I think there's a real big attack on birthing women, people, children, and those that look after them in a physiological way. I think it's a massive attack. But the thing as well is, I don't think they bargained for how hard we will fight,
Yeah.
how feisty we are, how we will go nose to nose, forehead to forehead for the rights of people to give birth normally. We are not going to be put down. We will not be silenced. In fact, we're getting more vocal. And like you said right at the beginning of this interview, you said, I'm not gonna, I don't know if you said it on recording
I've
or
been
not,
before.
but you said, yeah, but you said there's no compromise. There's not a cell in your body that can compromise the message that you're sharing for others on behalf of others. So you've had your beautiful physiological births at home. The reason why you're fighting is for others to have the right to do
Mhm.
the same. So yeah, it's just I feel very fortunate to be involved in these conversations.
Yeah, it's the
And
right for you to have that chance, and then to work with your body, and because it's not about whether the physiological birth ends in a cesarean or not, because
no,
if you really, still a magical birth. A cesarean done
that's
well when it's
right.
necessary is a magical birth at the woman, and I've seen
Magical
some
birth.
people coming out of them like, woo, you
That's
know.
right. That's
Still,
right.
they
I
still
think
get
that
the magic, and I want people to
there's
hear
still
that
the
you can
magic.
still have the magic with an elective cesarean, for a reason, when that reason is in alignment with your full body and your
That's
full
right.
autonomy and respect. It's just that it
That's
should be
right.
so much rarer,
That's right.
so much rarer. That's all. That's
That's right.
all.
That's literally it. Because I do value obstetrics, the
Mm,
abilities that they have to support people that need assistance in birth. But I don't appreciate obstetrics getting involved in pregnancies to a way where they derail the potential for physiological birth. And I'm not happy
mm,
about it. And and it doesn't matter if people that are obstetrically minded and are always doing too much too soon and over medicalising birth. They might say, oh, shut up. You heard you say that before, Kemi. The people that they're serving are not happy about it. And that's why, what is it that they're paying out medical negligence? Is it a billion?
lot.
Billion a year or
Don't know.
something? Or I think I'll check, but it's a lot of money. So that's a lot of unhappy people, and what they say as well is only 1 in 10 people will complain. So for all the billion, that could have been 10 billion if people just, complained about what they'd been through. So I think this is a huge wake-up call. They can hear it from us, but if not, they will hear it from the people, because people are getting more and more disgruntled with what they're receiving as that is being called maternity care.
Yeah.
They're not happy about it.
Okay. So I know you have to go on the hour, and so is there one last thing you'd like, say, women and birthing people to take away to inspire them forwards? Is there any last tip or inspiration you'd share?
Just, I'd say follow us, Charlotte and I, where we're commenting, what we're posting, have a think about what we've said. Ultimately, it's about you taking back your power. And I know having 100% responsibility for your birth is challenging, but you can share it. You can share that responsibility with someone that you know and trust. But you're going to need to find out who are the people that share your philosophy for your birth, what are their skill sets. You've really got to have something in place that you don't jump on your birth and sabotage it last minute, because sometimes we can pretend to be one thing, and then when the birth is happening and you're most vulnerable, we shapeshift. So I'm just saying, just know, to get recommendations if you're choosing caregivers. If you can't choose your midwife, at least see if you can budget for a doula and choose your doula. And just to protect your space. Make sure your partners are up to speed. If they can't be bothered to get up to speed, they ought not to be in your birth room. Pick someone else that you can trust, your best friend or your sister or something. Please, you're worth it. You really are. You're the queen. You deserve it. You deserve it. Your child is precious. We want your child to get here in their best health. You deserve this attention, the right attention.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Wonderful. So I really hope there's some wonderful, inspiring births that come out of listening to this conversation and other conversations that are out there. And thank you so much for sharing some of your time. I know you're very busy. There's a lot of call for your services, and we haven't really talked about that, but I will put them under the interview about. Because one of the things that people can do is when they come up against these obstacles, they can go and get a second opinion who's independent. So if they're coming to maternity care saying you should be induced, you should be this, and they're worried and they don't know all the medical facts and what that means, they can come away and get someone like you. I know you do your birth power hours. I know Janie does something similar. Many independent midwives do a service like that, or are willing to, where you can go through your medical notes and have them seen from the perspective of someone who trusts physiological birth and understands all the impacts of the interventions and when they might be necessary, and can give you, put you back in contact with what's right for you, so you can make an empowered choice. That's one of the things you do. I know there are other midwives that do that in antenatal care, so I'll put some details of those kind of things. And I know you also have Zoom calls that people can join from around the world, because you're based in Tanzania at the moment, having wonderful grandson cuddle, so you're multitasking with the grandmother and birthkeeper role.
Being a grandmother is just the most wonderful thing. So but I'm also very passionate about people being in their power and making powerful choices, knowing all the facts, so they can, so, like you say, if you've got a birth that requires obstetric assistance, it can be done with respect. You can still choose, make powerful choices, have skin to skin with your baby in theatre and things like that. So it's good to know what choices there are out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing, with interviews like this, and just spark off something where you find out things you didn't know. And then you can ask for them. So thank you so much for coming today. It's really been a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such fun. Okay.